is full of silence, and my soul is seeking you. You draw near me in your mercy, and your word makes all things new. You are faithful in the waiting, you are gentle in the storm. You have called me by your promise, you have kept my spirit warm. You are the song within my spirit, you are the lamp before my feet. You are the Lord of my salvation, in you my joy is complete. You are Lord, my heart's devotion, you are near in every breath. You are sweeter than the honey, you are life and conquer death. And I will sing of all your goodness, how you lifted me from deep. You are all my soul has longed for, you are Lord and you keep me. And you keep me. In the hour of my weakness, you have never turned aside. You have walked with me through sorrow, you have stayed here by my side. You have taken what was broken, you have clothed me now with grace. You have turned my mourning into dancing, and I feel this desert place. You are the fire upon the altar, you are the river running free. You are the Lord above all nations.
And where divine life truly dwells, it does not remain divided. What is born from heaven does not fracture as it moves, but carries within itself a unity that can be expressed without being broken. This is why the mystery of the two must be seen from within the life that flows through them, because what appears as two is not the beginning of division, but the unfolding of one reality in correspondence. In Zechariah, the two stand before the Lord of all the earth, and yet the vision never presents two sources. The oil is not divided, the light is not doubled. The flow remains one. The Peshitta preserves this sense of living movement, where what is poured forth does not separate into competing streams, but continues as a single supply entering the lamp. The Ethiopian tradition preserves the sanctuary's structure, showing that the order itself depends on a continual provision. And even when the Septuagint names them more directly as anointed ones, the unity of what sustains them is not lost. The two stand, but the life within the vision remains undivided. This is why the pattern of two in the Scriptures so often appears where something living must be established. It is not because truth requires division, but because truth is made visible through correspondence. One speaks, and another answers. One gives, and another receives. One stands, and another stands with it. In this correspondence, unity is not diminished, it is revealed. The two become the form through which one life is made visible without becoming abstract or unseen, and this begins to deepen our understanding of unity itself. Unity in the sacred sense is not the removal of distinction. It is the harmony of distinction held within one life. The two remain, yet they are not separated. They are joined by what flows through them. They are held by what they receive. They are sustained by what remains above them. In that sense, their oneness is not achieved by effort, but by participation. It is not constructed from below, but received from above. This is why the sanctuary pattern already prepares us to understand this mystery. The lampstand has many branches, yet it bears one light. The oil passes through different channels, yet it remains one supply. The structure is multiple, but the life is singular. Nothing in the sanctuary competes with itself. Everything answers as the same source. And so when the two sons of oil stand within that order, they are not introducing division into the vision. They are revealing how one life can be carried through more than one without losing its unity. This also begins to illuminate the meaning of one body and one house in the Scriptures. A body is not one because it has only one member, but because one life moves through all its members. A house is not one because it has only one stone, but because all the stones belong to one dwelling. In the same way, the two stand as one, not because they collapse into sameness, but because they are joined in the same life. The unity is deeper than form. It belongs to what flows, to what fills, to what sustains. And this is why the language of standing before the Lord of all the earth carries such depth. They do not stand in isolation. They stand in relation. They stand within a living order where what they are is defined by where they stand and by what they receive. Their identity is not separate from the presence before which they remain. This is why the ancient language of sons of oil is so powerful. It does not describe something placed upon them externally. It speaks of a relation that has formed within them through what they receive and carry. And once this is seen, the two begin to reveal something even more profound. They are not only one in life, but one in purpose. The light that appears through the lamp is not divided in its meaning. It shines as one testimony. In the same way, the two do not bear separate destinies. They are joined in a single witness. What is made visible through them is not a collection of voices, but a unified expression of divine reality. This is why the ancient textual traditions preserve this pattern with such care. The Peshitta keeps the organic sense of life moving through the structure. The Ethiopian tradition preserves the continuity of the sanctuary that holds the vision together. The Septuagint provides clarity without removing the scene's relational nature. Together, they allow the reader to remain within the mystery long enough to perceive that what appears as two is actually the unfolding of one life in visible form. And once this unity begins to take shape, another layer opens. If one life flows through the two, if one presence fills what stands before the Lord, then the question is no longer how the two relate to one another alone, but how this unity begins to move, how it acts, how it expresses itself when it is no longer only standing, but begins to function as one living reality in the earth. And when that unity begins to move, it does not move as two separate wills learning to agree. It moves as one life already shared. The action that appears is not negotiation. It is an expression. What has been joined in the presence of the Lord does not need to become one when it acts. It acts because it is one. This is why the movement of divine life carries such clarity. It does not hesitate between directions. It does not fracture into competing purposes. The flow that sustained the standing now becomes the flow that directs the movement. This reveals another dimension of the mystery of correspondence, because it is not only about position, it is about function. What stands together before the Lord begins to act together in the earth, not by imitation, but by participation in the same source. One does not initiate, while the other follows at a distance. Both move within the same life. Both express what is being given. And because of that, the movement carries coherence. It carries unity that is not assembled in the moment, but already present within the life that is being expressed. This is why the Scriptures often show divine action emerging from shared presence rather than from isolated effort. What is born in the place of nearness does not need to be forced into alignment later. It carries alignment within itself. The same oil that sustained the light now sustains the movement. The same presence that formed the dwelling now directs its expression. In that sense, action becomes the continuation of indwelling rather than a departure from it. And this begins to show that unity is not only something that can be seen, it is something that can be recognized in motion. When one life moves through the two, there is a kind of harmony that does not need explanation. The timing aligns, the purpose aligns, the direction aligns, not because everything has been planned outwardly, but because everything remains connected inwardly. The source has not been lost, and because the source remains, the movement remains true. This also reveals why sacred unity carries authority. Authority in the Scriptures is not first the power to command. It is the power to express what is true without distortion. When one life flows through the two, what appears carries the weight of the source from which it comes. It is not weakened by division. It is not confused by competing intentions. It speaks and acts from a place that has already been made one before the Lord of all the earth. That is why such a movement can bear witness with clarity. It does not need to establish itself. It reveals what has already been established. And this is where the pattern begins to deepen into something even more living. The two are not only one in standing and one in movement, they are one in response. What comes from above is received together. What is given is answered together. The life that flows is not interrupted between them. It continues. In that sense, the two begin to function as one living reality, not as two separate centers, but as a single expression carried through correspondence. This is why the sanctuary pattern remains so important even here. In the sanctuary, nothing acts independently. Every movement belongs to the order of the whole. The lamp shines within the house. The oil flows within the structure. The fragrance rises within the same dwelling. All of it belongs together. In the same way, the two who stand before the Lord do not move outside of the order in which they were formed. Their action remains within the life that made them one. And once this is seen, the unity begins to reveal its fruit. What is one within itself becomes fruitful without confusion. It produces a witness without contradiction. It brings forth light that does not flicker between different sources. The fruit of such unity is clarity, stability, and living testimony. It shows that what has been formed by divine life can move, act, and appear without losing its origin. And this is where another layer quietly opens. If the two function as one living reality, if their movement is the expression of one indwelling life, then their action in the earth is no longer only symbolic. It becomes a manifestation. It becomes the visible activity of what was first formed in the presence of God. And that begins to draw the pattern closer to its full unveiling, because what was once seen as a vision now takes on the character of something that can stand, move, and act within the world itself. And when that begins to happen, the question deepens again. If one life through the two becomes a living action in the earth, then how does that action appear when it is no longer veiled in vision, but stands openly as a witness that carries the authority, unity, and purpose of heaven? And when that action stands openly in the earth, the mystery of manifestation begins to take on a greater seriousness, because what was once contemplated in sanctuary form is no longer only inward, symbolic, or veiled. It becomes visible. The one life that flowed in sacred order begins to appear in history as witness, and what had been formed before the Lord of all the earth now stands within the earth as a testimony that bears his order. This is why the movement from standing to action is so important. Standing speaks of nearness. Action reveals what that nearness produces. The two do not move into the earth as separate powers, trying to preserve unity after the fact. They move as one life already formed in heaven's order. Their witness carries authority because it is not invented in the moment. It is the outward appearing of an inward union that has already been made stable in the presence of God. That is why what appears through them has weight. It is not improvisation. It is a manifestation. And this begins to show why one living reality can become such a powerful testimony in the world. The world knows alliance, agreement, arrangement, and cooperation, but those things are not yet the same as shared indwelling life. What comes from above reveals something deeper. It shows what happens when unity is no longer held together by effort, but by one source, one flow, one purpose, one presence. That is why the action of the two can go beyond mere effectiveness. It bears revelation. It shows that heaven has established something in the earth that the earth cannot produce for itself. This is also why the witness of one life through the two does not merely perform works. It carries presence. What appears outwardly is inseparable from what remains inwardly. The authority is not detached from the source. The movement is not detached from the indwelling. The action is not detached from the standing. Everything remains joined. This is what gives manifestation its holiness. It is not mere power appearing. It is divine life appearing without losing its relation to the one from whom it comes. And that is why the ancient sanctuary pattern continues to matter even here. The sanctuary teaches that holy action is never independent of holy order. The lamp shines because oil is supplied. The fragrance rises because what has been appointed is kindled. The priestly service carries meaning because it answers to the pattern shown from above. In the same way, one life through the two becomes a manifestation only because the action remains under the same order that formed it. Life does not leave the source behind when it appears. It brings the source into visibility through the faithfulness of expression. This begins to reveal another depth in the meaning of witness. Witness is not only what is said about God. Witness is what becomes visible when his life is truly carried in the earth. The two as one living reality do not only speak for heaven, they embody heaven's order in motion. Their unity, their purpose, their steadfastness, their shared life, all of it becomes part of the testimony. The witness is in the light, in the harmony, in the movement, in the perseverance, in the way one life continues to shine through more than one without becoming divided. And once this is seen, the pattern begins to move even closer to revelation. Because there, the language of the two standing openly in the earth gathers all these earlier layers into one field of manifestation. What Zechariah showed in the sanctuary mystery starts to appear in the prophetic witness. What was once contemplated as flow, lamp, oil, and standing takes on the form of living testimony within the world. The movement is no longer only inward, it has entered the public realm, and yet the essence remains unchanged. The source is still above, the life is still one, the witness is still joined, the authority is still received. This is what makes manifestation so searching. It is not simply the appearance of sacred power, it is the appearance of sacred order under public conditions. The one life through the two becomes visible where it can be seen, resisted, measured, and answered. That is why manifestation always carries both beauty and gravity. Beauty, because divine life has become visible. Gravity, because once visible, it reveals the condition of everything around it. What is aligned recognizes it. What resists it is exposed by it. The witness does not become harsh in order to do this. It does so simply by remaining true while standing in the open. And this means that the two, as one living reality, are not only a mystery of inward union, they are also a mystery of outward appearance. The indwelling seeks expression. The shared life seeks witness. The one flow seeks light. What has been formed in the hidden nearness of God eventually presses toward the open field of history, where heaven's pattern can no longer remain only contemplated, but must be seen, answered, and either received or resisted. And this is where the next threshold begins to open, because now the question is no longer only how one life flows through the two, but how that one life stands openly in the earth as a prophetic testimony, and how the Scriptures bring that mystery to full visibility when they speak of the two witnesses. And when the Scriptures begin to speak openly of the two witnesses, the earlier mystery is no longer left in the sanctuary alone. It comes forward into a field where divine life must now be seen under the conditions of the earth. The pattern remains the same, yet the setting changes. What was once shown in lampstand, oil, standing, and flow now appears in living witness, in public testimony, in a form that history itself must confront. This is why the transition is so weighty. It is not a change of meaning, but an unveiling of the same meaning in a more exposed realm. The two witnesses in Revelation are not simply two voices added to the world. They stand as the visible form of a testimony already prepared in the presence of God. The language reaches back deliberately to Zechariah because the Spirit is not abandoning the earlier pattern. The Spirit is bringing it into manifestation. The two olive trees, the two lampstands, the standing before the Lord of the earth, all of this gathers the sanctuary mystery and carries it into the open. The one life through the two has now become a testimony that does not remain enclosed within sacred imagery, but stands where it can be seen, resisted, and answered. This is why their witness must be understood as more than speech. What they say matters, but what they are is inseparable from what they proclaim. They do not merely announce a divine reality. They stand in it. They do not merely describe the order of heaven. They embody its correspondence, its unity, its endurance, and its source. This is what makes their witness so searching. The world is not only hearing words, it is encountering a form of life that carries heaven's pattern into the earth without surrendering its origin. And this is also why the imagery of lampstands remains so powerful in Revelation. A lampstand is not the light itself, yet it is the bearer of light. It exists to make what has been given visible. So when the two are named as lampstands and olive trees, the witness is shown in its full movement. They receive, they bear, they shine. They stand in relation to the source, and because of that, the testimony they carry is not borrowed brightness. It is a sustained manifestation. The oil and the light belong together again, only now the sanctuary image is standing in the world. This begins to show that the two witnesses are not simply an example of prophetic ministry in isolation. They are the appearance of a sacred order. They show what happens when one life through the two becomes public testimony. Their shared witness reveals that unity formed before the Lord can stand under earthly conditions without losing its coherence. Their endurance reveals that what is sustained by heaven does not live by the world's permission. Their presence reveals that divine reality can enter history without being absorbed into the age's patterns. And this is why the world around them must react. A witness like this cannot remain neutral in its effect. It reveals too much. It carries measure, contrast, and light into a realm accustomed to mixture, compromise, and self-exalting display. The two witnesses do not create that contrast by striving to be oppositional. The contrast appears because heaven's pattern is now visible, What is aligned with truth can recognize it. What resists truth is exposed by it. The witness stands, and by standing, it becomes a dividing light in the earth. This also deepens the meaning of prophetic testimony itself. Prophetic witness is not only foretelling. It is the manifestation of heaven's reality within time. It is the standing of something in the earth that cannot be explained by an earthly source alone. So when the two witnesses appear, the issue is not merely what future events they announce. The deeper issue is that they embody a pattern that comes from above. They show that divine life can still form a witness, sustain it, and bring it openly into history as a sign of the Lord's authority over the earth. And once this is seen, the relation between Zechariah and Revelation becomes even more luminous. Zechariah gives the inner architecture of the mystery. Revelation gives its public appearance. Zechariah shows the one supply, the one light, the standing before the Lord. Revelation shows the same order under the pressure of earthly contradiction. Zechariah lets us contemplate the pattern. Revelation lets us watch it stand. Together they reveal that what heaven forms in secret nearness does not remain forever veiled. It comes forth as testimony. This is why the two as one living reality reach their sharpest expression here. They are not only one in source, one in life, one in purpose, one in witness. They are one in manifestation. What appears through them is not a fragmented testimony, but a joined one. The world does not meet two unrelated streams. It meets one prophetic reality carried through two standing witnesses. That is why the pattern remains so powerful. It reveals that divine fullness can be expressed through correspondence without losing its unity, and can enter the public realm without being broken into competing parts. And this is where the mystery begins to gather its final weight. The one life through the two has now moved from sanctuary to standing, from standing to movement, from movement to manifestation, and from manifestation to prophetic witness in the earth. What began as holy flow has become open testimony. What began as a lamp and oil has become a witness and light under public conditions. What began before the Lord of all the earth has now appeared within the earth as something that bears his order and cannot be reduced to the terms of the world. And once that begins to settle before us, another question rises with great force. If the two witnesses are the open appearing of one divine life carried through two, then what does their testimony reveal about the final conflict between heaven's order and the orders of the earth? And how does sacred unity become a witness so serious that history itself must finally answer it? And when sacred unity becomes a witness so serious that history itself must answer it, the final conflict is revealed for what it truly is. It is not merely a clash of messages. It is a clash of orders. It is the meeting of what comes from above with what has exalted itself from below. It is the moment when the life, light, and measure of heaven stand openly in the earth, and everything built on another source is forced into exposure. This is why the two witnesses carry such gravity. They do not stand only as prophetic voices announcing judgment from a distance. They stand as a form of divine order made visible. Their unity is part of the testimony. Their one life is part of the testimony. Their perseverance, their measure, their light, their correspondence, all of it becomes a sign that heaven has established something in the earth that the earth cannot explain, contain, or silence by ordinary means. The seriousness of the conflict comes from that fact. The witnesses are not merely saying that another kingdom exists. They are manifesting their pattern. And this is what makes the final conflict so searching. The world does not only hear a challenge, it encounters a contradiction to its own foundations. Earthly orders often depend on fragmentation, rivalry, spectacle, fear, pressure, and the management of appearances. But the witness formed from above stands in another strength. It remains one where the world expects fracture. It remains luminous where the world depends on display. It remains measured where the world is driven by exaggeration. It remains under divine government where the world lives by self-exaltation. That is why sacred unity becomes such a threat to what is built on another source. Its very existence shows that another order is possible because another order is already present. And once that order is present, the hidden crisis within earthly systems comes to the surface. Systems built on self-will cannot easily tolerate a witness that does not need their approval. Powers built on outward force cannot easily absorb a testimony that carries inward authority. Structures held together by anxiety cannot easily endure the presence of a reality resting under divine government. The two witnesses stand, and by standing, they expose the instability of everything that appears strong while remaining cut off from the source of life. In that sense, the conflict is not created by the witnesses' aggression. It is unveiled by the presence of truth. What is false begins to shake because what is true has entered the field. This is also why the pattern of one life through the two carries such finality. It is not merely one beautiful example among many. It becomes a decisive sign. It shows what divine life looks like when it is carried without fracture. It shows what heaven's order looks like when it appears on earth without surrendering itself to earthly terms. It shows that sacred unity is not a fragile spiritual ideal, but a formed reality capable of standing in the midst of conflict without becoming what it opposes. And that is why the witness becomes so serious. It is not simply a call to choose one opinion over another. It is the appearance of a measure that divides between two orders of existence. The ancient textual traditions help preserve the solemnity of this threshold. The Peshitta keeps the witness close to the flow of life and living relation. The Ethiopian tradition preserves the sanctuary's gravity, preventing the vision from becoming merely sensational. The Septuagint keeps before us the marked and appointed character of those who stand in divine purpose. Together they guard the mystery from becoming thin. They remind us that when the two stand openly on the earth, the issue is not spectacle for its own sake. The issue is the manifestation of divine order under final conditions. And this begins to uncover a deeper meaning in the phrase, before the Lord of all the earth. What stood before him in sanctuary reality now stands within the earth. He rules. The relation has not changed. The source has not changed. The authority has not changed. What has changed is the field of visibility. The witness now stands where the world can see what heaven has formed. That is why the public appearing of the witnesses is so weighty. It is not an interruption of the earlier mystery. It is its ripening. What was hidden in the pattern has become open in testimony. What was contemplated in vision has become enacted in history. This is why the final conflict cannot be understood only in terms of opposition. It must also be understood in terms of unveiling. The witnesses unveil what true government looks like. They unveil what true unity looks like. They unveil what true measure looks like. They unveil what true endurance looks like. And by unveiling these things, they also expose their counterfeits. The earth is forced to see the difference between life that comes from above and power that exalts itself from below. The seriousness of the conflict lies there. It is a conflict of revelation. It is the moment when contrast has become impossible to conceal. And once this is seen, another depth begins to open. Sacred unity does not become powerful only when it confronts darkness. It becomes powerful because it remains faithful to light. The witnesses do not gain authority by reacting to the world on the world's terms. They carry authority because they remain what they were formed to be before the Lord of all the earth. Their greatest strength is not imitation of power, but fidelity to source. Their greatest confrontation is not noise, but truth. Their greatest seriousness is not fury, but the fact that heaven has established in the earth something the earth cannot finally overcome without exposing itself. And this is why the final conflict carries such gravity for the whole scriptural pattern. It is the place where sanctuary, temple, bride, witness, measure, unity, and manifestation all gather into one public testimony. What has been formed inwardly now stands outwardly. What has been filled now shines. What has been joined now witnesses. What has been measured by heaven now stands as measure in the earth. And history itself must answer, not merely to words spoken, but to a reality manifested. And once that begins to settle before us, the mystery reaches another threshold. If the final conflict is truly a clash of orders, and if the two witnesses stand as the open appearing of heaven's pattern in the earth, then what kind of victory belongs to such a witness? And how does divine life finally prevail without ceasing to be itself? And the victory that belongs to such a witness cannot be understood in the way the world imagines victory, because what is born from divine life does not prevail by becoming the image of what it confronts. It prevails by remaining true to its own source. This is the mystery that runs quietly through the Scriptures from beginning to end. What comes from above does not conquer by surrendering its nature, but by revealing that its nature is stronger than every order built against it. The light prevails by remaining light. The truth prevails by remaining true. Life prevails by remaining joined to the one from whom it flows. This is why sacred unity is so central to the witness. If the one life through the two were only a temporary harmony, it could be broken by pressure. If it were only an outward agreement, it could be dissolved by conflict. But because it is formed in divine life, it carries within itself a kind of victory already. It stands in the earth as a sign that heaven's order has not only spoken, but has taken form. And once that form appears, the powers of the world are confronted not merely by resistance, but by a reality they cannot truly reproduce. They may imitate strength, but they cannot generate holy correspondence. They may enforce compliance, but they cannot create shared indwelling life. They may magnify themselves in public display, but they cannot produce oil-fed light that remains joined to the source. And this begins to show why the witness can suffer without being defeated. The world often confuses harm with victory and silence with triumph. But in the Scriptures, the deepest victories of God are often the victories of what remains true under contradiction. What is joined to the source cannot be finally overcome by the conditions through which it passes, because its life does not depend on those conditions. The one life through the two does not prevail by escaping all conflict. It prevails by carrying the order of heaven through conflict without surrendering itself to darkness. That is why the witness remains so serious. Its strength is not in avoiding deathly conditions, but in bearing divine life through them. This is also why victory in the sacred sense is inseparable from manifestation. What prevails is what reveals the greater reality. If the orders of the earth are exposed as unstable, self-exalting, and severed from true life, while the witness remains ordered, luminous, measured, and joined to heaven, then the victory is already becoming visible before the final conclusion is spoken. The world may still rage, resist, distort, and oppose, but the witness has already shown what endures and what cannot. It has already been uncovered which order bears true life. In that sense, the victory begins as a revelation before it is recognized as final. The light has already shown the difference. And this gives another depth to the sanctuary pattern that has run beneath the whole mystery. The lamp does not triumph by becoming fire without oil. It triumphs by continuing to burn from the supply given to it. The dwelling does not triumph by becoming a fortress of self-protection. It triumphs by remaining a place where presence abides. The bride does not triumph by becoming like the powers that oppose covenant order. She triumphs by remaining the dwelling of delight, fidelity, and indwelling glory. In each case, victory belongs to what has remained in relation to the source. The triumph is not self-made. It is the vindication of what was truly formed by God. And this is where the language of resurrection, renewal, and vindication begins to hover very near the pattern, even before it is spoken directly. Divine life cannot finally be sealed under the terms of the earth. What proceeds from God may pass through contradiction, pressure, concealment, and suffering, but its source is not exhausted by any of those things. This is why the witness carries a depth the world cannot measure rightly. It is not only alive in the ordinary sense, it bears within itself the testimony of a life stronger than deathly order, stronger than silencing, stronger than every attempt to reduce heaven's pattern to earthly terms. And because of that, sacred unity becomes more than a sign of harmony. It becomes a sign of indestructible life. This also reveals why the final victory of such a witness is not merely its survival. It is its vindication as truth. What was opposed is shown to be right. What was resisted is shown to be from God. What was treated as a contradiction to the world is shown to be the very pattern by which the world itself must finally be judged. That is why divine life prevails without ceasing to be itself. It does not need to become another thing in order to win. It only needs to remain what it is until everything else has been measured against it and exposed as unstable. The victory belongs to truth because truth abides. The victory belongs to light because light reveals. The victory belongs to divine life because divine life endures and rises beyond the terms imposed upon it. And once this begins to settle, the whole pattern gathers into one living ark. The one life flowed through the two. The two stood before the Lord of all the earth. Their shared life became a witness. Their witness became a measure. Their measure became a contrast. Their contrast became a conflict. And their conflict became the field in which divine order was openly revealed. Now the final movement begins to appear. Victory belongs to what has remained faithful to the source throughout. Victory belongs to what did not fracture, did not imitate darkness, did not abandon measure, did not lose its light, and did not surrender its unity. In that sense, the victory is not a departure from the earlier mystery. It is the full flowering of it. And this is why the witness of the two is so profound. It shows that heaven's life can be carried in the earth, can stand under resistance, can expose false order, can remain itself in conflict, and can finally be vindicated without ceasing to be holy. What begins before the Lord of all the earth ends as a testimony that the earth itself must answer. What begins in oil and light ends in revelation and victory. What begins as one life through the two becomes the open declaration that divine order not only appears in the earth, but finally prevails over every order that exalts itself against it. And once that is seen, another question begins to rise with quiet force. If divine life prevails by remaining true to itself all the way through conflict, then what does this reveal about the kind of people, dwelling, or witness that must be formed now in order to bear that same holy victory when heaven's order is brought openly into the earth? And this is where the mystery can no longer remain only in the vision, because it is beginning to move toward open witness in the earth. We will stop here for now and continue together in the next video. Thank you, family, for being here. If this teaching helped you, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps this message reach those who are seeking. To our new subscribers, welcome. And if you'd like to go deeper, we invite you to join as a member. The link is in the description and on our homepage. We are praying for you and standing with you in the light of Messiah, He and Messiah, She. If you'd like to support the ministry, you can visit our store or bless our dear brother Michael via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below, which also includes a link to our second store with new designs. Thank you for your love and encouragement, and stay tuned for the next video. May the spirit of wisdom and peace rest upon you always.